year according to the COLA as published by the Social Security Administration. We also extended the length of time a person must be a property owner in Ledyard to 5 years. And we canceled the property tax cap ordinance for homeowners who are 70 years or older. Again, the reason we did this is because it's costing us $300,000 a year. That's $1/3 of a mil to support the program as it was originally written. And I would ask, the tax assessor is here, I'd ask her to correct anything I may have misstated.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Did you have anything to add?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I am here just as a representative of the town to make sure everything is legally correct.
Thank you. So he was pretty perfect up to this point.
Yes.
Yes. Good job, Mr. Jones. Okay, this time I'll open this up. If anybody has any comments, I'll ask that you please limit it, if you can, to 3 minutes. Yes.
I don't know if I can limit it to 3 minutes, but I have given
Your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is William Burling. My address is 7 Sleepy Hollow Pentway, Gales Ferry, Connecticut.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to read this. I hate to do it, but I don't know how to do it in a clear way other than that. So I commend the town for seeking to update the abatements for economically disadvantaged elderly and for the physically advantaged Ledyard citizens of any age. So I commend you for that. And reading the history of the effort, and I am familiar with that history, it goes back quite a ways, and looking at the proposed change, there are 3 aspects of the change that stand out for me. The first item is that I sensed an urgency to make changes now to the ordinance that governs tax abatements. The second is that I sensed an urgency was based upon a perception of a significant increase in absolute dollars of the tax abatements offered by the town over time. What that means is, as mentioned earlier, the total sum of the 2005 abatements was $50,000, and it was compared against the 2017 sum of abatements of $341,000. So that was perceived as a significant increase. Thirdly, I didn't observe historical discussion in any of the literature that I read on what elderly or physically advantaged might need for income to retain their homes and pay for at least minimal health and food services. Decision makers must be aware of such numbers before mechanisms can be defined for tax abatement. Now, I'm going to break this down into, let's look at this urgency that was discussed. The first item is that in order to understand this urgency, you have to understand that you can't derive meaning out of a single number. Absolutely impossible. So by quoting, well, look, it's $341,000, that's not meaningful. So the bottom line is that the town's budget is the bottom line. And it represents the dollars that citizens are willing to provide for services they deem important. So one cannot talk about X dollars for a service, you talk about X dollars relative to the budget bottom line. Now, so that means $341,000 relative to what? The bottom line. So I'm suggesting that we talk, instead of $341,000, we talk about the percentage. Now, if we do that, what we're saying is this abatement is a service that the town is providing to the elderly and the physically disadvantaged, so that at a cost, just as we are doing for young children in their education. So this graph, which I will provide you, I'll have to send it in because I couldn't do it very well. You can see, well, okay, for education, we're spending maybe 50 million, or what am I saying? the cost of service is 0.5, in other words, roughly 50%. And for general government, it's roughly 40. And here, way at the bottom, less than 1% is what this town is choosing to spend to help the elderly who are disadvantaged economically or the physically people. So it's 1%. That changes the thing from being a big number to a small number relative to all the other expenses that we have in town. So now the question is, is this rate increasing too fast? Because if it is, we do have to worry. So what I did is I went and I plotted out, thanks to Adriana, all the abatements over time. And that's what you will see here. Now, the problem with what I saw the Finance Committee did in their presentation, they only gave two numbers, 2005 and 2017. When you only give two numbers, that means you basically only have a linear curve to try to predict what's going to happen in the future. You need all the data, because all the data, you end up with a polynomial fit. And the polynomial fit shows you that we're not growing at all. Where in fact there's a negative growth in the cost of providing this service to the elderly and to the physically disadvantaged. So the rate of growth is not significant. It's 0.02%. That's 0.0002. That's a very small growth rate. So, and these are all government numbers, your government numbers. So, I know Bill Soms and Adriana are absolutely, I very much respect them and appreciate them. And I know that they're doing their best in this whole thing. I think this whole thing is coming down to perspective. And I'm trying to offer a different perspective. And that perspective is that, hey, we've got to treat this abatement thing not as this isolated thing, but as a service that we're providing the elderly. And we've got to invest more effort into understanding what do we want to provide for the elderly. None of that's really addressed in this proposal. We've got to do that, and then once we do that, then we can more sensibly decide what kind of an abatement will we want to provide. So that's what I'm advocating, and I'm offering my services to do that. And the goal and the end result, the report that I would generate for you would be to identify those things that are important in the decision-making process of deciding what should be behind providing services for the elderly in several strata, so that the town citizens can make an informed decision based upon multiple choice. You know, for this cost you get this help for the senior citizens. For this cost you get a different help, so that they can see the pros and the cons in a few options. So that's what I'm offering, and I hope you'll consider it. I think otherwise Bill and Adriana did a fabulous job. I just want this other perspective to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Garland.
Does anybody else have any comments at this time? Mr. Treaster.
Just a couple of questions. Eric Treaster, 10 Huntington Way. What is the maximum income threshold where deferred taxes are no longer available under this ordinance?
So I'm looking at the
It's actually
table.
written right into the ordinance.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance.
I'm just, what,
It's 30.
35.6, I believe.
I did not see that number in here.
Is that the most updated version?
It's the one that was on August 21st. And I'm only concerned about the deferred taxes, not the tax credits.
Oh, okay.
That's the latest draft. The one that when you went to
Right, and that
finance.
has the income limits.
Would you wanna look at it?
So the income limits for tax credit,
Right. That's not the issue.
okay, but let me give you those. It's 36,000 single, and 43,900 married. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
that sounds
Okay.
right.
Unmarried, it's yes, I read the table wrong. So for married homeowners, it's 43,900, and yes, for unmarried, it's 36,000. But that's for the tax credit. And you can choose either a tax credit or a deferment.
Correct.
Does that answer your question?
My concern is that under the tax deferral, section 5,
Yep.
my reading of the ordinance was that those limits are only applicable to the tax credit, not to the tax deferral. And perhaps I misread it. It's quite possible.
Okay.
And the reason is that it doesn't seem to make too much sense otherwise.
So I think I see where you're going. Your concern is that under this ordinance as written, anyone could defer their taxes.
No, not anyone.
No.
They cannot have more than $50,000 in liquid assets.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people will have their assets in some, like real estate.
Right.
Or they'll have rental income. My reading of section 5, and I hope I'm wrong, but my reading of section 5 is somebody could have $500,000 in income, live in a $500,000 house, and if they didn't have $50,000 that was liquid, they're entitled to a 50% reduction in their taxes.
Deferral.
Deferral, correct.
So I think we should take that as a comment and just make sure that that can't happen.
So that's one of my concerns.
My understanding of our original intention was that they had no more than $50,000 in assets outside of their primary residence
Yep.
and one vehicle for each individual.
Yep.
In this edit that was rewritten, that may not have come through. So that would something.
Yeah, I mean,
that
a
would be
quick
something
scan
we
through the
want.
deferral, nowhere does it refer back to the income table.
Yeah.
And that's something that we'll have to
Yeah,
address.
and the definition of liquid assets is cash, bank accounts, and marketable securities.
Yep.
But somebody could have $100,000 in royalties, rental income, there's all sorts of ways. And as long as they lost it at Foxwoods, so they didn't exceed $50,000 liquid, they would be entitled under paragraph 5G that at least half of their taxes would be deferred and possibly 75% of their taxes would be deferred. So if their taxes are $10,000 a year, under the proposed ordinance, they could conceivably get $7,500 tax deferral. So
The deferral caps at 50%.
no tax deferral shall exceed in the aggregate 75% of the total amount of property tax.
All right, that needs to be clarified then.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's one issue. The other issue is that the interest on the deferral is 6%. I have no problems with that. My little steep, but no problem. My concern is that if $5,000 a year is being deferred for 10 years, a lot of money. At the end of that 10 years or 15 years, if that building is gifted, donated, turned into a group home, it's not sold, it's not inherited. How does the town get its money? Now, there's a lien on the property, but that means that the town is going to have to go through a foreclosure proceeding.
Would you like to end?
In the ordinance, it says if it ceases to be the owner's primary residence,
yeah.
this would cease.
But there's a lien on it for the town to get its money back, there's a lien. And if somebody doesn't write the check to the town's only choice is to go through foreclosure. So the, now if that property is worth $500,000 still, you may or may not get the money back. Now there's a provision in here where the total, so that's a, I'm not sure if the unintended consequences have been assessed for the tax deferral. Just my observation. There's some.
So we can take that as a comment, right?
Right.
Okay.
And that's all I have to say.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
The town appears to be protected where no more than 10% of the town's net assessed value, everything in the town, can be deferred or abated. I like that. It's a big number. I think it's way too big, but nevertheless, it's in there. And there's a little technical detail where the tax deferral shall be limited to the principal residence of the taxpayer, that's okay, as defined herein, and the standard minimum building lot for the zoning district which the residence is located together with improvements, and shall not in any case be applied to taxes owed on excess acreage or other land beyond the minimum building lot. This has some interesting quirks to it. If you have a tiny little lot in an area that's zoned R60, the value of what you pay, you get the deferral on that little lot. If you have a 5-acre lot in an area that's zoned half-acre, now what taxes do you pay? It's what taxes do you have? How many what taxes get deferred? It's a little quirky, so just something to think about. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Tricia.
you.
Yes, you have a question?
I have a question, a comment. The town of Groton requires a resident to live in their primary residence for 8 months of the year. I think we only require 6. I think I read
183 days.
6 months. Okay, just comparison.
Thank you. So we are, is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Hearing none, this public hearing is adjourned. And we'll wait a minute.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm not sure that we've ever had a meeting, but we must have in 18 years on 9/11. But at this time, I would ask for a moment of silence for those that lost their lives 18 years ago, and also for those families that live today with those memories. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mrs. Ingles?
Here.
Mr. Malone? Mr. Marshall? Mrs. McGrattan?
Here.
Mr. Sebelia?
Here.
Mr. Soms?
Here.
Mr. Washington?
Here.
7 here, 2 absent.
We have no presentations this evening, no informational items that I'm aware of. Are there any resident and property owners who wish to speak at this time? Yes.
Yes. Hi, I'm Ed Monahan, 49 Homestead Road. I did want to speak in my capacity as the chair of the Southeastern Connecticut Water Authority. I was pleased to see on your agenda that you're going to be appointing Mike Cherry to one of the positions on our Representative Advisory Board. I just took this opportunity to remind you that since Dr. Norris, I think, moved back to England, there is a second vacancy. There's another vacancy in the two-person Ledyard quotient on our Representative Advisory Board, and I would encourage you to think about filling it in accord with our guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Miss you.
Well, I didn't go that far. What we do. There are no committee, commission, and board reports. Comments of town councilors. To my left, any? To my right, any? Yes, Bill.
I want to thank everybody in Ledyard and the Ledyard Fair Association, Board of Directors, and the town for putting on a fantastic Ledyard Fair this year. Well attended, I think everybody made money, ran out of food, sold everything they had. It's an awesome weekend.
And thank you, Bill, for your hard work. You spent a lot of time at it.
Thank you.
I know you do.
It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. I have a few things, but they'll show up under liaison reports. I will entertain a motion that we approve. Let's go for all three, see how we fare. Is there a second?
So moved.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion, comments,
I
corrections?
need
Yes.
to, I wasn't here on the 14th.
You can still vote.
All right.
Yep.
Sure.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Okay.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. You have your communications in the portal. I have one referral this evening. I mentioned it at the last meeting. At the last meeting of the Ledyard Fair Committee, they would like to broaden the number on the committee from 7 to 9. Because it's just a lot of work and we just need 2 more people.
You said Ledyard
You
Fair
said,
Committee?
yeah, Ledyard
What did I say?
Ledyard Fair.
Oh, Ledyard Farmers Market. See, I have too many, way too many hats, but one of them is not the Ledyard Fair. Thank you for the correction. And so they would, it's just a lot of work for 7 people. They would like to expand to 9. I did chat with the town attorney on the idea of allowing a resident outside Ledyard to fulfill one of those spots. And while Roxanne and I thought there was a little loophole there, and actually the town attorney said she agreed there could be a loophole, that it wasn't worth trying to do that. So the one person we were actually considering is willing to volunteer to work, even though she's not a committee member. So that solved that issue. But we would like to, or they would like to, ask that you consider expanding the committee from 7 to 9. And so I will refer that to admin. Okay, now we'll move on to subcommittee liaison reports. I'll start with subcommittee's admin.
Admin met tonight. The only substantive item on the agenda was appointing Mike Cherry as the mayor's designee to SQUA, which is on the agenda later tonight.
I wanted to clarify now, because in that there are 2 spots, should we just put Mr. Cherry in for that second spot and leave the mayor designee spot open? Which
Well,
is
it was one from each party. Tim Norris, who has moved to England, was a Democrat.
Okay.
And so it's probably not a bad option to just, the mayor's designee is whatever party they choose, and then there would be that one other option, which would be, so we would still have Mr. Norris's seat to fill,
Okay,
in other
okay,
words.
so
I think that's a
so
good
Mr.
approach.
Cherry will be your designee.
Right.
Okay. Just so you all follow that one. Okay. Any questions for admin? Finance.
Town Council Finance Committee met August 21st. The Finance Director reported that work continues in preparing for the annual audit. It seems like it's never ending. We finish one and start another.
Yeah.
The committee discussed recommending a change to the Town of Ledyard Statement of Procedures for adjustment tax collections. And you'll recall that we had a resident who had a $2,400 tax duplicate payment, and that had to come to the council because it was over the $1,200 limit. So the mayor reported that he typically signs off on about 8 to 10 adjustments per week. The problem is the state requires that the council, according to one interpretation of the language, that we look at them all. And if we were to follow that, it would make the situation worse, not better. So what we did was decide to stick with the current procedure, and we raised the $1,200 limit to $2,400. $2,400 because that is 50% of the sample annual tax bill for a home in the Highlands, which is how we figured it out years ago. So we are suggesting that anything over $2,400 should go to council. All the other towns do the same thing. No one really follows the letter of the law, and it's a little vague. It doesn't even say legislative body, it says municipal authority, or something like that.
So there's obviously no penalty.
Apparently not. So we changed it to we can't fix that one resident because he went through the waiting process, but we can fix it for a lot of
He was
people.
satisfied
Yeah,
with how it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he brought it forward.
Yeah.
In other business, we talked about a recent emergency decision by the mayor to purchase a used fire truck for $10,000 without town council authority, which we normally use. And considering that it was an emergency, given that all of our pumpers were out of service, the only thing left that could pump water was the ladder truck. And the mayor thought, well, if that fails and we have a house fire, because we're waiting for the town council, so he went ahead and purchased the truck. And the finance committee commended him for that, but in further research, we found that actually there is an emergency procedure, and we should have held an emergency town council meeting. So word for the future is we'll have to follow that. But again, it was the right decision. That truck has been used multiple times. It maybe didn't follow the procedure, but it was the right decision. We just can't do it again. And as it turned out, the ladder truck had a blown hydraulic hose shortly after. Our quote-unquote new truck I've seen it on the road quite a few times. It was at the fair tonight. It's lime green. It's a pretty nice truck. And we got our 13 back, which is the one that was in the shop for repairs. That's back on the road. A few lights not working, so it's going back again, but that's back in service. And everything else is on the agenda.
Very good.
That's my report.
Any questions for finance? Land use.
Land use met last week. We reviewed the attorney's comments to the alcohol ordinance. We accepted his comments for incorporation. We're hoping to move that at our next meeting. We started looking again at the door bleach ordinance, but we were waiting for the ACO to come to our meeting. She's scheduled to show up at our October meeting as well. Other than that was it.
Any questions for land use? Hearing none. Liaison reports. To my right.
WPCA.
WPCA.
They met on August 27th. Water revenue is down from projections because it's been a wet spring and summer, so people aren't washing their cars and watering their lawns. But accounts receivables are up slightly. Xylem Controls is demanding payment of the amounts they claim are due, but Fuss & O'Neill is handling that. That's the engineering firm. And they're responding by providing the costs we incurred to complete the work that they didn't do, and all the overtime we incurred in running the plant without the controls. So that's being handled. WPCA is in the process of having the Gallop Hill tank and vault demolished, finally. And a required lead test found lead in the mastic used on the walls of the unit, but none in the paint in the tank, so that will be remediated and they'll remove the tank. DPH Department of Public Health has provided procedures for abandoning the Loftus well field and pump house, which requires hiring a certified contract to fill the well with concrete. WPC also reviewed their section of the Plan of Conservation Development, made minor corrections before forwarding it back to Planning and Zoning. And Groton Utilities reported that almost 90 customers have refused a cross-connection inspection and requested the WPCA approval letter notifying customers the water will be shut off if they don't permit one. DPH requires this. Ledyard is unique because people are not used to having them done, and here, I don't know how many years, 10 years later, we're doing them and they're still refusing. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill? Any other liaison reports? Mary?
The residents down at the Kings Corner Manor are very happy. Things are going very well, and I must commend the Housing Authority. All of the members have pitched in and really are getting the houses in the area up to snuff. And they have hired a maintenance man,
Yes.
so it's going well.
I know, because I haven't had a phone call in at least 2 months. I used to get them routinely once a week, as you all know.
Still carrying it on my agenda.
I think you can take it off.
Obviously, that's good news. Any other liaison reports? I have a couple. Ledyard Farmers Market, we have 2 markets left. And we were able to announce last night that the winter market has moved from the senior center to St. David's Church. St. David's is the one for those that need to know, Route 12 and Route 214, that particular church. It really filled all our needs, better location, easier to find, much larger, so we could have more vendors, a beautiful kitchen. I mean, the people were like gaga over the kitchen. So we hope that it's going to be a good location for us, for them and us. And the first market, winter market, will be November 16th. So things continue to go well, and not a lot of complaints. It's been very good, been a good season. The weather, we have not had great weather. Today was pretty good, a little humid, but good weather, I guess, this time. Okay, let's see, what else? Beautification Committee, very cool project. You may see some info on that. They're collecting bulbs or money for bulbs, and they want to be able to plant several thousand bulbs so that in the spring, everything kind of pops up yellow. And I just think that's a grand idea, and they're doing really well as far as people donating. They did really well over at the farmers market, so thank you for those that donated. And then finally, I'm liaison also to Parks and Recs, and Saturday is their grand opening with the seniors, and that's Saturday from 11 to 2. So hope to see all of you there. Any other liaison reports? Moving on to the report of the mayor.
Okay, so our annual windfall from Kerma equity distribution was received. That was almost $40,000. So Kerma is our insurer. They insure, I think they're at about 162 of the 169 municipalities in Connecticut. And when claims are fairly low to stable, they are able to disperse proceeds similar to what USAA would do, if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
So that was nice. We did the ribbon cuttings for both the schools. That was all the way back in August 19 and 20. This one came up, and I need to kind of poll the council on this. The Council of Governments is contemplating organizing a regional ethics commission. And I remember when Councilor Eichelberg was on the town council, this was something that he expressed interest in a ethics commission. But it's an option. How it would be done, it would be formed by the Council of Governments. Volunteers would be appointed from each of the sending towns. An ordinance would need to be created, and there would be a pay-as-you-go funding feature. So at some point, if you can just, each of you let me know your interest at my next Council of Governments meetings, I will let them know if there is interest in the Ledyard Town Council to consider participation in this. I provided you a letter from Sector not too long ago. It was a letter of services that they provide, and I also provided that to EDC because I think it's important to see. One of our ordinances that we have are in the process of deleting involved a revolving loan fund for business startups, and Sector actually provides that. So that was one of the reasons why you opted to delete that ordinance. I had a meeting with Colleen Lauer, the director of King's Corner, along with Charlie Doozy, the Senior Housing Authority member, just to discuss their operations going forward and for her to share how she's proceeding. I think Colleen's doing an excellent job down there. They're 100% occupied right now. They are working with CHFA to move ahead appropriately. And they have actually closed their waiting list because some of the people on the waiting list have been on there for 8 years. So when they notified the CHFA that this is how long their wait list is, they said, don't accept any other names right now. Just, continue to work off the list as you need. But I think Colleen's doing an excellent job, and Charlie and the rest of the senior or housing authority members are doing a great job. On paving, if you've been down Flintlock Road, Flintlock has been completely redone. Road turned out great. They're actually in the process of finishing Coachman's Pike. Also, if you have a chance to go to the transfer station, you're going to see a new treatment that we've never used. It's called fog sealing. And the fog sealing was almost like a spray on, almost like a spray on undercoating type of thing, like for a vehicle. And when I was speaking to our public works director, he kind of made it sound like it's like lotion for your face for the asphalt. And so he said this could buy us 3 to 5 years, shorter than the micro seal, but it could provide us 3 to 5 years on more limited use roads. And it's a matter of 30 or 40 cents a square foot as opposed to, say, $4 a square foot for asphalt. So could be an inexpensive way to stretch the years on. CCM annual convention is coming up December 3rd. It's a ways out, but I still want to let you know because I know, Mary, you've gone in the past. And
December 3rd?
December 3rd. I think it was around Halloween last year. They bumped it back a ways.
Yes, because I've never been able to make it because of the date it was all these years, and now they finally moved it to a date, so I will have to.
Okay,
All right.
December 3rd.
So
Okay.
it's a great opportunity to learn. It's a really great day of. They have a lot of different breakout sessions for learning from different groups. So please do feel free to attend and look that one up. Triple E mosquitoes. They, as you probably saw in the News Channel 3 interviewed me today, they have been trapped in Ledyard / Mashantucket. The fact sheet that came out from the Department of Public Health is fairly alarming that 3 out of 10 cases are fatal, and 50% of those that survive have permanent neurological damage. So the triple E virus is not something to mess with. I sent out, as soon as I was made aware, I sent that out to the Board of Education and to the Parks and Recs director and asked them to make decisions as quickly as possible on how they wanted to proceed, and both agreed to end on-field outdoor activities no later than 6:30 p.m. So that's happening already, and the football game that is scheduled for Friday night is now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon as opposed to a 6:30 start. And then the last thing, I opened the farmers market tonight. It was a military tribute night. I thought it was a great night, and I had 3 pages of names of community members that have served in all our branches of the military. And as everybody knows here, Ledyard is rich with military, and so many stay and retire, or retire and stay and give back, and even those that are active do. So I thank all of those that provide so much for the town of Ledyard. And that is my report for tonight.
Any questions for the mayor? Hearing none. Let's see, we have no old business. Anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. I'll turn this over to admin.
I make a motion that we set a public hearing date to be held on September 25th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers, Annex Building, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding a proposed ordinance regulating short-term rentals in the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated August 28th, 2019.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, and while this is just a motion to, a vote to set the public hearing, I would ask everybody to please read all of the correspondence that has come on this, and all of the minutes from the meetings that have been held on this subject. And the reason I'm asking specifically to do that is because I plan to say that while I can't stop people from speaking again, that to please realize we have read all this information,
Yes.
and that for them to repeat, what they have previously told us, is just going to take up time. I mean, if they want to speak, that's fine, but I want everybody to have done their homework, so appreciate that. Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
Motion to set a public hearing date on October 9th, 2019 at 6:30 PM to be held in the council chambers, Annex Building, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding proposed amendments to ordinance number 130 and ordinance concerning blight and public nuisance for the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated August 28th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I make a motion that we recommend the town council appoint Mr. Michael Cherry, R. 5 Whippoorwill Drive, Gales Ferry, to the Southeastern Connecticut Water Authority, SQUA, for a 2-year term ending August 31st, 2021, to serve as the mayor's designee.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. I think we actually sort of already discussed it. Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Next item is for land use.
I make a motion to accept Flatbrook Court and public improvements located on a separate tract of land at the intersection of Flatbrook and Long Cove Road into the town's road inventory as a public street in accordance with ordinance number 45, an ordinance amending an ordinance regulating the addition of any new street or highway to the highway system to the town of Ledyard, as described in the quitclaim deed from Green Falls Association LLC to the town of Ledyard dated December 20, 2017, and the state of Connecticut conveyance tax return of the real property which accommodates Flatbrook Court.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any questions or discussion? This is routine.
This is routine. We have the letter of acceptance from both the planning and zoning and the public works directors that they agree that we are now in a position to take this into the public road inventory.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Washington?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item, I'll entertain a motion to approve a proposed resolution in support of the Connecticut Jobs and Revenue Act as contained in the draft dated August 20, 2019.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Mayor, would you like to?
Sure. So this was presented to me by Senator Austin several weeks back. It's something that she's been working for and seeking support from municipalities in terms of protecting the Mashantucket and Mohegan facilities and the revenues and jobs that they support for southeastern or eastern Connecticut as a whole. And a number of towns have already passed this resolution and submitted it, and it was something that I had put in the comments section on this, that I support both tribal enterprises, business enterprises, but I have reservations about when you read the bill that is associated with what they're proposing, which goes behind this. This is really just to get potentially a special session before the February 5th, 2020 is when the regular session begins coming up. So this is ahead of that potentially, but the bill that's proposed, the 37-page bill that's proposed, calls for a number of different things. And Councilor Ingles reached out to me, and I identified a number of them that I think are kind of like moral issues, like reducing the gambling age from 21 to 18, allowing consumption of alcoholic beverages till 4 o'clock in the morning as opposed to 2 o'clock, permitting the sports gambling, and then another one where they're calling it a entertainment zone, I guess it is, because it's not really a reservation. So the entertainment zone would be Bridgeport, which is where they would seek to have another $100 million investment for a new casino. That wasn't the source of my concern. The source of my concern in the legislation, or proposed bill I should say, is that it takes a piece of this newfound revenue from these enterprises and carves it up amongst, I'm going to say, 9 different municipalities. And as you can imagine, Ledyard is not one of them. It is places like Norwalk, Norwalk and places like Hartford and West Hartford and East Hartford and Enfield and Ellington. And so I still struggle with the fact that we have a tremendous amount of expenses that are associated with hosting the reservation itself here, and others are viewing it as a newfound pot of money to play with. So as much as I support the resolution, I absolutely cannot support the Senate bill that is proposed. So
Is the idea to get those towns, the representatives and senators from those towns to support this bill?
probably it's a way to secure votes for this. And Eastern Connecticut historically is not often heard, though I did go to Hartford several times this year to be heard, and I was rewarded a little bit briefly for that. However, I think that there is a serious inequity here, and if they want to talk about doing what's fair and right, I'll be there, and I'm happy to talk to them about what's fair, right, and truly equitable. But, when our police force has grown to 23 officers, and they're very busy around the clock, there's a reason for that. And it's not because our population has exploded. So there's a whole bunch of different reasons, and I'm happy to share them, and we've done so already, but we have to keep pushing that, pushing the facts and say, here are the facts, and we need you to make a decision based on the facts.
Any other questions? So Mayor, you are in support of this?
Yeah, I support the resolution. I think that, the resolution of getting to a session or to the table is one thing, but once we get to that point, I will be asking our representatives and our senator, and I will be there too, to say, we need to be heard.
Okay, so let me think on this a bit, because we have no vote once it's out of this. I mean, we have no vote. I mean, you can talk all you want, but we're just little old Ledyard. Okay, Roxanne, would you call the roll?
You're not first.
Don't-
Mr. Dombrowski.
No.
Mrs. Engels.
I would really, I'm going to abstain.
Mrs.
And why are you
McGrattan.
abstaining? I think I can ask.
Because I don't feel confident that this is going anywhere good.
That's why I voted no.
But I could be persuaded, so I will vote abstain versus no.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked.
That's okay.
Continue the vote, thank
Okay.
you.
Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
Mr. Sebelia.
I'm going to abstain.
Oh, okay. Mr. Soms.
So I'm going to comment. I'm torn on this. I don't like the idea of 18-year-olds gambling.
No kidding.
I don't like gambling, period, but as Senator Austin says, that was a 25-year-old discussion. So we're going to have to talk to our representatives to negotiate for us, because I also think we have to keep up with the competition and what's happening in surrounding states. So I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Washington.
I want to vote no.
Okay. Mrs. Davis.
No.
Okay. So we've got 2 in favor.
Two abstentions.
No, that's,
That is
he
the
said no.
messiest vote we've ever had.
Sebelia.
By the time
Oh, he said no.
the resolution gets
Abstain.
before the
Oh, you
consent,
abstained.
sorry.
We've already voted
Okay.
and discussed,
Yeah.
yes.
So, and Linda said no? Linda?
I voted
She's
no.
no.
No, okay, I've got these checks in the wrong places. Okay, so we've got 2 in favor, 3 noes, and 2 abstentions.
So the motion does not carry.
It failed.
So this is a good one. We're televised for the person, and I'm not sure who it was, that always complained that everything is unanimous. This is certainly a...
There he is right there.
Right, and I don't believe it was necessarily political.
No.
So this is
I don't
just a
think
good
so.
demonstration.
No, we've got-
No.
But if you, I'm sure Mike can attest to this, that bill, when it comes out, isn't going to look like or sound anything
Right.
like the way the mayor described it. It is going to be whittled down to, so that's why I voted yes.
But I voted no because once again, Ledyard's going to be left out in the dark.
Right, okay, well, like I said, it's just the beginning.
Mr. France to comment.
Mike France, 17 Garden Drive, Ellsbury, Connecticut. That is true. It might not look like what it is, and that is true. It's a negotiation. The challenge is, if it goes before special session, there won't be an ability to change it on the floor once it gets there. So all the discussion will have been had, and whoever's in the room at the time of the discussions will get the influence. But whatever comes to the floor in a special session. So my issues, and I've raised these with Senator Austin, are twofold. One is there was no public hearing on the bulk of what was here. For background, the day before the end of session is when I got a 1.5-page list of bullets, most of which are contained in this bill. And Representative Claridis, myself, Representative Hall, and we're in the Speaker's office asking about this. We basically had a public hearing. We're getting this the day before, so there's no way that we can do this. And so going back to the concern about the off-the-top money from the Pequot Fund, when that was established, I know Senator Austin is working to elevate back up to somewhat close to the levels it was. But the year that it was found, the money came was $110 million. $88 million went to the towns, 80%. Today, it's about $270 million, down from a peak of just over $400 million, and only about $50 million goes out to the towns. The other thing that's changed is what comes off the top. So there's the host communities or impact communities, and when that first started, Montville and Ledyard had a higher amount than Preston, North Stonington, and Norwich. Over time, all those monies came to be even. When the proposal came out in 2015 to basically direct the tribes to form a partnership and find a town to host, which East Windsor became that location. When that bill passed 2 years ago, the legislature approved the same financial off the top for the Pequot Fund for East Windsor, South Windsor, and one other town that are truly impact towns. But then they also gave it to Hartford, East Hartford, and a few other towns that made demands. And the challenge is that the impact of hosting what I term a tribal business entity, which is relatively a small casino, smaller than what we have in our area here, is not the same as hosting the tribe itself, the tribal nation. So what I did is this year I proposed to change those definitions. That bill didn't get anywhere in the program. It basically differentiate between the towns like East Windsor and the two surrounding towns that are hosting a casino, and those that host a tribal nation, which has also the responsibility of educating the children of that tribe. And as the mayor attested to, we did, he and Superintendent Huntley came up to Hartford several times to talk to the various leadership groups. And in roundabout numbers, about $4 million impact to the town of Ledyard for that. That is not counted into we've talked to the mayor many times about this, as well as the increase from about 10 officers when the casino's opened to the 23 we have now. It's about another $1 million. So you look at just those two things, and there are other secondary tertiary costs, but you have about $5 million in impact to the town of Ledyard that the town of East Windsor and the surrounding towns and the other ones that got money, Hartford, East Hartford, and others, will not see. And so one of the things that Senator Austin is planning to work on is to increase the amount of Pequot money that's set aside for towns back up to ideally the $88 million, which would then change that. But the challenge that is faced in the practical one, and certainly Councilor McBride will understand being legislature, is getting the leverage to take the 5 towns in eastern Connecticut with a handful of representatives and 3 senators to make those changes and send money to eastern Connecticut is very daunting. The practical reality is this bill is the leverage to do that. It's about $70 million in estimated new revenue. You take some of that off the top and go to the towns, as the mayor indicated. But this is the time to do that. Instead of taking about $50 to $55 million into the general fund out of this, we should be taking $3 to $5 million off the top, designated it as part of the Pequot Fund off the top to the impact towns here. Norwich, Preston, North Stonington, Ledyard, and Rockville. That's the challenge that we face, and this is the leverage to do it. Because Bridgeport wants the casino. That's their big ask. Well, Bridgeport has 8 state representatives and 2 senators that have an interest in this bill passing. This is the time to have that discussion and to get their support for equity off the top to the towns that are impacted by the gaming that's happening in our state. So those 2 things, I think, are the things that really need to be leveraged. And the challenge with, as I said, it started with the special session, is that what comes before the legislature, it's an up or down vote. It doesn't change on the floor. That's why the committee process is so important, no different than what we do in the committees here for the town council. That's where most of the work is done. You have the debate, you have the public hearing, you have input. And I think that particularly 2 things that the mayor pointed out are the drinking time and the age of, changing the age of gambling. And for perspective, currently the only allowed gambling 18 is the off-track betting for horses and TV and lot. Everything else, the traditional gambling, which we expect at a casino, is 21. So that's a big change, and the public has not had an opportunity to weigh in, nor the advocates. There's agencies and organizations that advocate on either side of the issue, not having an opportunity to weigh in. So I think that is part of the process that will not happen if we have a special session. So.
Thank you. Okay. We don't have any work session items since we finally are pretty much gone through all of the ordinances, and Fred, the mayor and I are working on signing all of the ordinances for when that happy day comes. So I will, without any further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.
Linda, you put the Know Your Town on the forum,
Things.
because it's Sunday.